in the ancient port city of Alexandria, where golden sands met the deep Mediterranean, and scholars walked alongside merchants and priests, a young queen would rise. Not through birthright alone, but through unmatched intelligence, ambition, and mastery of politics. This is the story of Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, a woman who held the fate of an empire in her hands during the final days of the Hellenistic age. Join me as we uncover her rise, her alliances, her struggles, her triumphs, and the tragic ending that shook the ancient world. For nearly 300 years, the Ptolemaic kings maintained a delicate balance of Greek aristocracy and pharaonic tradition. However, by the time Cleopatra's father ascended the throne, the dynasty was crippled by massive debts owed to Roman lenders and paralyzed by constant internal strife, relying heavily on Roman patronage for sheer survival. The glittering wealth of Alexandria, its magnificent library, and its status as the last major Hellenistic power only made it a more tantalizing prize for the ever-expanding Roman Republic. This was the vulnerable, unstable kingdom the young Cleopatra inherited. She was not merely a royal figure, she was a political necessity for a failing kingdom that needed a genius to maintain its sovereignty. Cleopatra VII was born around 69 BCE in Alexandria, the proud heart of Egypt. She came from the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Macedonian Greek royal family that had ruled the land for nearly 3 centuries. When her father, Ptolemy XII, died, the throne passed jointly to Cleopatra and her younger brother Ptolemy XIII, partners in theory, rivals in truth. Cleopatra was around 18 years old. Almost immediately, her rule was threatened. Palace intrigues, foreign pressures, and internal rivalries pushed Egypt into chaos. Tensions between Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII grew, eventually erupting into open conflict. Forced to flee Egypt, Cleopatra sought refuge in Syria. But exile didn't break her. Instead, she began forming plans to reclaim her throne, waiting for the right moment. Her rival, the eunuch Pothinus, and the general Achilles effectively seized control of the capital, forcing Cleopatra into a desperate flight across the desert border. Yet, in Syria, Cleopatra proved her strategic genius. She did not merely hide, she tirelessly raised mercenary troops and secured vital resources while calculating the geopolitical climate. The arrival of the Roman civil war on her doorstep was not merely a threat. It was the ultimate, necessary distraction. This external conflict was the very lever she needed to execute her plan and return home, not as a fugitive, but as a contender backed by foreign military might. In 48 BCE, just as Egypt wrestled with civil turmoil, the Roman civil war spilled into its borders. First came Pompey, seeking refuge, then the rising Roman general Julius Caesar. Cleopatra recognized what her survival required, an alliance with Rome's most powerful man. Their partnership wasn't built on beauty alone. Ancient sources emphasize her intelligence, her education, and her mastery of languages. She was the only ruler of her dynasty who learned Egyptian, and she spoke several other tongues fluently. During the siege of Alexandria, Cleopatra and Caesar grew close. Their bond, political and romantic, changed Egypt's future. After Roman reinforcements arrived, the war turned. Ptolemy III drowned in the Nile while fleeing the battlefield, and Cleopatra reclaimed her throne. Months later, she gave birth to a son, Ptolemy XV. Caesarion, believed by many to be Caesar's child. After consolidating her power and confirming her alliance, Cleopatra spent nearly 2 years in Rome, stirring intense political controversy within the Republic, which feared the sight of a foreign queen being honored by Caesar. Upon her return to Alexandria, she consciously and cleverly redefined her public image. More than any ruler before her, she embraced Egyptian identity, portraying herself as the living goddess Isis while still maintaining her Greek heritage. By blending 2 cultures skillfully, she became a symbol of both worlds, the embodiment of a united Egypt in a time of political uncertainty. Once her power was restored, Cleopatra focused not only on survival, but on strengthening her kingdom. Under her leadership, Egypt flourished. She oversaw agriculture, expanded international trade, improved the bureaucracy, and launched ambitious construction projects. After Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE, Cleopatra returned to Alexandria and declared her son Caesarian co-ruler. Meanwhile, Rome plunged into chaos once again. As new power struggles emerged, Mark Antony became one of the most influential figures in the Roman world. Cleopatra saw an opportunity, an alliance of enormous potential. When she sailed to meet Antony in Tarsus, she arrived as Isis incarnate on a magnificent barge. Antony, who admired her charisma and political strength, was captivated. Their alliance quickly turned into a partnership, both romantic and strategic. Together, they dreamed of reshaping the Eastern Mediterranean. Their union produced 3 children and strengthened Cleopatra's claim to power, the new Roman East. This powerful strategic partnership was publicly formalized through the controversial Donations of Alexandria, where Antony publicly distributed vast eastern territories to Cleopatra and their shared children. This act was designed to solidify a new Eastern empire independent of Roman control, leveraging Egypt's unmatched wealth to finance legions and fleets. But to Octavian, sitting in Rome, this was not just a political maneuvering, it was outright treason. A Macedonian queen and a Roman general conspiring to carve up the Republic's future. Octavian ruthlessly weaponized this imagery, convincing the Roman public that Cleopatra was a foreign sorceress seeking to dominate Rome itself. But in Rome, Octavian, the future Augustus, saw their alliance as a threat. He launched an intense propaganda campaign, portraying Cleopatra as a dangerous foreign queen manipulating Antony. Tension escalated until, in 31 BCE, everything exploded into war. At the Battle of Actium, Antony and Cleopatra's forces faced Octavian's fleet, and were disastrously defeated. The couple retreated to Egypt, where desperation and fear overtook them. Miscommunication and grief led Antony to fall on his sword, believing Cleopatra had already died. Cleopatra, left with no hope and refusing to be paraded in humiliation through Rome, chose death. Whether by the bite of an asp or through a lethal poison, a matter still debated, she ended her life in August 30th BCE. With her death came the fall of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the end of independent Egypt. Rome claimed the land, turning it into a province. The world Cleopatra fought for vanished, but her legacy endured. Octavian's final act to ensure Rome's unquestioned supremacy was the execution of Caesarion, Cleopatra's son, with Julius Caesar, thereby eliminating the last male claimant to the great dictator's legacy. With Caesarion's death, the final vestige of the Ptolemaic and Hellenistic age was erased, leaving the Roman Empire under the soon-to-be-named Augustus as the undisputed global power. This marked not just a regime change, but a profound cultural shift that would define the next 2,000 years of Western history. Cleopatra's death did not signify the fall of just a queen. It marked the end of an era. Rome rose as the unrivaled power of the Mediterranean. For centuries, Roman writers distorted her memory, reducing her to a figure of seduction and scandal. But modern research reveals the truth. Cleopatra was intelligent, multilingual, politically brilliant, and deeply aware of her people's culture. She defied the might of Rome longer than any other ruler of her time. And her story remains alive because she was far more than legend. She was a queen who dared to challenge an empire,